Howdy, all you literary legends and luminaries. Today's episode of Booksmart, well, I wasn't even sure if I should do an episode on this book. Matthew Perry's Friends, Lovers, and the Big Terrible Thing. I know I'm out of the loop, about a year behind all the hoopla. I remember people saying that the book would be hard to find because so many people were going to buy it. Every time I went into Barnes & Noble, Chandler's face was all over the place, so the book was always there. I picked it up and put it down. I'm so glad I found it this summer at my used bookstore where I essentially didn't have to pay a dime for it because I used my book credit. I'm so happy I didn't pay for this book. Now let me back up a bit. I like Friends, but I'm not a diehard fan. It's not in my top 10 all-time favorite shows. It might make the top 10 if I just consider sitcoms. I'm more of a Seinfeld person. The characters on Friends annoyed me to a certain degree. Rachel was shallow, Ross was hilarious but childish, Monica was too neurotic, Joey was more a caricature than a character, and Chandler was funny but a bit overdone at times. Phoebe was my favorite because she wasn't part of that trendy, clippy group. I related to her most with her concern over the dying Christmas trees, breaking up with the cop because he shot the bird, the way she ran, and her furry orange coat. Phoebe felt unique to me. So yes, I was sucked into the whole Ross-Rachel thing like the rest of the world and giggled when Ross and Joey napped together. I love the flashback episodes, especially with Chandler's flock of seagulls hairdo. And remember Zuzu Pets? My son loved them when he was 5, but they had a short life. He got a whole bunch for Christmas, but by the end of summer, Zuzu Pets were only taking up space in the basement. I couldn't resist buying this little guy though. I oohed and ahed over his name. It's Chandler. He was clearance down to nothing, so I picked him up thinking, oh, Zuzu Pets might be one of those Furbies in the 90s. And little Chandler here didn't take up much space. But was I dying to read Matthew Perry's book? No, not really. I didn't even watch the reunion show on HBO. I'm always a bit leery with celebrity memoirs, although I do read quite a few of them. I approach them differently than a memoir by someone who isn't a celebrity. I didn't pay attention to the reviews of Perry's book. I didn't pay attention to any of it last fall, so I was not prepared for what I read. To start, I was a bit excited to read it once I brought it home. The lackluster foreword by Lisa Kudrow aside, I had read somewhere along the way before the book came out that Perry writes screenplays or something like that. So I was thinking, yes, a celebrity memoir by someone who actually writes. And the first chapter was funny and sarcastic. His potty mouth was perfectly suited for the situation he was describing. He starts with a more recent part of his addiction when he's 49 years old. He's now 53, so I'm assuming he was 50-51 when he wrote it. And I enjoyed his structure, flipping back and forth between the relatively recent past and long ago. And then about 40 pages in, I'm getting a bad taste in my mouth. Like after you eat a tuna sandwich and it's great while you're eating it, but then you resent the aftertaste, which remains even after you've sucked on 3 peppermints, like that. I'm sensing a sort of egomaniac emerging. Yes, Julia Roberts was your girlfriend. Yes, you're a very important person. There's just something that's a little off. And then it happens on page 50, which had I read headlines on the aftermath of his book release, I might have known, but I didn't. So let me read to you what I was shocked about because I wasn't paying attention to the news. He is talking about River Phoenix's death. And he says, River was a beautiful man inside and out. Too beautiful for this world, it turned out. It always seemed to be the really talented guys who go down. Why is it that original thinkers like River Phoenix and Heath Ledger die, but Keanu Reeves still walks among us? I stopped reading, thinking, wait a second, I have missed something. Like I, as the reader, had taken something out of context. I searched the immediate area around that statement and before it, thinking I had missed something, looking for some sort of explanation. There wasn't one. It just hung there. I put the book down for a bit. Now, I am not one who gets bent out of shape about something somebody says. I have better things to do with my time. Even at work, when something happens that you're just wondering where all the common sense went, I don't let it bother me anymore. I didn't used to be that way, but now that I'm older, say and do what you want. I'm just going to do my own thing and not let you bother me. But a 50-year-old man wishing another man dead. What? I'm not even a huge Keanu fan. I used to make fun of the way he said in Speed, I'm not here for you, man, let's not do this. which sounded very close to the way he said, terrible, no, it just reminds you that we're all alone, that's all, in Paula Abdul's Rush Rush video. I bet you didn't remember he was in that. So I like Keanu Reeves, but I never gushed over him. I did love Speed in high school, the movie, not the drug, but didn't fall in love with his surfer dude vibe that was prevalent pre-Speed, although I did prefer his hair longer, just kind of on the top. But as I've aged, I respect Keanu's privacy, out of the spotlight life. He's his own person and seems to stay out of the mainstream drama. He seems like a very nice man. If Matthew Perry would have written, and Charles Manson walks among us, okay, bad example since Manson was already dead, but Ted Kaczynski wasn't at the time Perry wrote this, so he could have said, yet Ted Kaczynski walks among us. That would make sense. But Keanu Reeves, of all people? So I reluctantly kept reading. But now I'm actively searching for things that aggravate me, which isn't what I should be doing. Now, the constant reminders of Julia Roberts was my girlfriend, the repeated references about being an unaccompanied minor, the I'm the only person in history besides Michael J. Fox to have the #1 TV show and movie at the same time, I can't take it. And then on page 123, when he finds out Chris Farley has died, he states it again. Keanu Reeves walks among us. What is wrong with him? Could he be any more pathetic? So I'm just going to tape this right here, because I don't want to look at Matthew Perry anymore. So we're just going to put Keanu right there in our friends frame. I think this big terrible thing in his title could have multiple meanings. And then I figure out why I'm so angry. He claims to be in recovery. He's allegedly working the steps. Matthew Perry is a 50-year-old man writing his autobiography, and he's writing Keanu Reeves Walks Among Us, inferring that Keanu should be the one who's dead rather than River Phoenix or Chris Farley. And I think he means this now, in the present, not how he felt in the past. If this is what he thought in his younger drug-addicted days, you would provide context. You would provide context because with age and recovery, you'd find the error in your thinking. Maybe he could write why he was upset with Keanu Reeves. Was it because of Keanu's movie success in the 90s? Was it the irritating surfer dude persona? Was it that Keanu, a private person who doesn't wear his heart on his sleeve, didn't react to River Phoenix's death the way Matthew Perry thought he should? Maybe Perry was pissed that Keanu could dabble in drugs and not become a raging out addict. My mom used to longingly comment on my grandma, who could have the occasional after-dinner cigarette and not need another for days or weeks, whereas my mom was pretty much a chain smoker. Any number of these reasons would provide context to Perry's thinking, and I wouldn't think ill of him for thinking at that time in his life that Keanu shouldn't be walking among us. Although I have to say, in reflecting on my own teenage years, I didn't even wish my worst enemy dead. I hope some tragedy would befall them, some embarrassing moment that would shame them for eternity, but I didn't wish death upon them. And teenage girls are the fiercest beings on the planet. We all say and think things that we regret, that are irrational, that are hurtful and offensive. It doesn't excuse our behavior. But when we're young, or younger in Perry's case, we need to give ourselves a little bit of slack in the event that we have grown wiser and realized the error of our ways. Perry obviously has not. So now, as I read the rest of his book, I don't trust him at all. I don't trust his recovery nor his attitude toward it. You're a 50-year-old man who puts in print that you wish another man dead. Yeah, that sounds like you're really working the steps. He gave us a hint of authenticity when he's describing that being on Friends wasn't enough. I feel bad for him that he couldn't enjoy that moment, a moment so few people ever get to experience. I feel empathy for him regarding his addiction, but I'm not trusting his narrative of recovery. Not all of this is Matthew Perry's fault, though. It's the problem of celebrity memoirs. And since this is the first celebrity memoir I've reviewed at Booksmart, Perry is going to take the brunt of my wrath because, well, he deserves it. #1 problem with celebrity memoirs: they aren't memoirs. A memoir focuses on one aspect of a person's life, not their whole life. Almost 20 years later, we continue to give Alanis Morissette grief over ironic and how the song didn't represent irony, although I disagree because some of her examples do showcase situational irony. Yet no one talks about how celebrities and their publishers use the word memoir incorrectly. It even says it right here in little print, a memoir. Perry could have written a whole memoir just on Friends, and it would have sold out. He then could have written another on his recovery. His addiction would have factored into Friends because he was an addict on the show, but saved the rest of it for another memoir. The Friends part of the book was disappointing because I didn't learn anything new. I didn't already know about Friends. Jennifer Grey's memoir was the same way. She could have written one on every single detail of Dirty Dancing and we would have read it. Then she could have written another book just about her nose. Melissa Gilbert's memoir had 2 chapters about Little House on the Prairie. Really? That's it? Diane Keaton is the only celebrity memoirist who understands what memoir means. Thank you, Diane Keaton. Number 2 problem with celebrity memoirs. They're writing a book because it will sell, not because they have a passion for writing, which then makes me question the editing process. Do the editors really get to do their jobs, or is it a given that the celebrity is in charge? Sharon Stone's memoir was the biggest mess of a book I've ever read. It made 0 sense and was all over the place. While Perry's book made sense, I question how 2, not 1, but 2 voodoo comments wishing another actor dead made it past the editor. Did the editor say to Perry, hey, I think we need to axe these comments about Keanu Reeves? And then did Perry say, no, I'm a very important person. I dated Julia Roberts. I had the #1 show and movie at the same time. I'm hoping that's what occurred. If not, shame on the editor and the publisher for not questioning such content. And the number 3 problem with celebrity memoirs, the actor is not the character we associate with them. Chandler had 0 ego. That's what made him a lovable character. Matthew Perry is all ego. I wanted Chandler Bing, not Matthew Perry. This is my fault, not Perry's, but this can sour our view of whatever the actor represented. I have not watched an episode of Friends since I read this book. Not that I would have necessarily, but I have no interest in catching a rerun anytime in the near future. When I read Richard Marx's memoir, he was not the nice, humble man I always thought he was. And please don't respond with Richard Who. That will make me so sad. The book should make me love the person and their art more, not less. But now I'm cringing just a bit at Friends. I'm thinking of even changing this little guy's name to Keanu. Especially when then I Googled the whole Keanu bit and I saw that Perry did apologize, but said it was just a random name he used. Twice. Exact same sentence and that's random. Can that be any less random? Perry's apology lacks sincerity and authenticity, which is perhaps the whole problem I had with his autobiography. I refuse to refer to it as a memoir because it isn't. So you take a risk with every celebrity memoir you read. If you really adore the celebrity, you may not after you've read their book. However, you could like the celebrity more after you've read their book. Always proceed with caution with celebrity memoirs and make sure you understand it's probably going to be an autobiography. So where does that leave me in this review, assuming you're like me and waited to read it? Well, if you wanted to find out more about Friends, you're not going to in Perry's book. If you wanted to find inspiration about recovery from drugs and alcohol, well, I wouldn't put too much stock in someone who is allegedly in recovery who wishes another person dead and seems to have no qualms about putting it in print for the whole world to see. Save your money. And if you're like me and can find the book for free, save your time. Watch The Lake House instead. Thanks for watching. At Booksmart, my goal is to get a little bit smarter, one book at a time.